Right.
You're good.
All right. Welcome to the Littleton Board of Health Zoom meeting on 6:30 on Thursday, October 22nd. Have the disclaimer to read. The town of Littleton began conducting remote participation Zoom meetings pursuant to Governor Baker's emergency order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law on March 19th, 2020. Since that time, unanticipated legal concerns relating to the open meeting law have been brought to our attention by the town clerk. These concerns were supported by the Attorney General's office and confirmed by town council. One concern is that the chat function allows a parallel text conversation to the board's public meeting. Chat is essentially running commentary that is occurring but is not moderated or followed by the chair. Participants and listeners may not be aware of the comments being made. Some meeting participants join by phone and do not see these conversations. Another is conversations between residents within the chat room, which are not incorporated into the public. In response to these concerns, the town will implement the following changes, which in no way prohibit any member of the public from participating in discussion and sharing information during a public meeting, and will ensure that all listeners and participants have equal access to this meeting. People that join the Zoom meeting are set so their microphones are muted. If you called in by phone, use *6 to unmute or to mute or unmute your phone so that the meeting can occur in an orderly fashion. We ask that people, sorry, I thought maybe I was muted. We ask that people who join keep their microphones on mute so background noises do not interfere with the meeting. If you wish to participate in the meeting, please use the raise your hand function available on Zoom. If you called in by phone, dial *9, which will activate the raise your hand function. The meeting host will notify the chairperson of the raised hands, and the chairperson will determine whether and when to allow public comment. When called upon, participants should unmute and state their name and address. And after speaking, we request that the participants return their microphone back to mute. So there was one thing that I just wanted to say, and I forgot to mention it last week, is that Jim and Scott and Alex's group had a very successful flu clinic at the Littleton Fire Department. I forgot to mention it last time, Jim, so thanks for doing that, and thanks for joining us tonight. Tonight on the agenda, we were going to have a joint discussion with the COVID advisory team with Katrina, John, Kevin, and Corey. So do you guys want to do we want to discuss hear about the COVID update, and then we'll talk about Halloween? How's that sound? Okay, so Katrina, do you want to take the lead on this?
Did you guys get I know the the rates from the state just got published today. Did you guys have the slides, or should I share them? Do you have them ready to share, or should I do it?
Well, if you've done them already, let's look at them.
Okay, so am I allowed to share my screen? Give me 1 second and to get set up, because I wasn't ready for that.
Okay.
Oh, it's gonna make me do that. Hold on.
Do you have a second? Should we ask Jim for any information? You want some time?
Yeah, why don't you do that while I try to sort that out? That would be great.
Sorry to put you on the spot, Jim, but do you have any new information for us at all?
So the numbers that did come out today, the state kind of pulled a fast one on us. And yesterday when we went looking for our numbers, there was a note saying check back on Thursday. So they're going to be published now on Thursdays. And I think that's partially because, at least in some of the DPH calls we've had, that seems like in an effort to try to make sure they're getting it accurate as an accounting and all the numbers are right, they're kind of pressed for time on a Wednesday to get the numbers out. One Wednesday, it actually was almost 8 o'clock. So I think they probably went to Thursday to give them enough time to make sure everything is accurate. So Littleton went from red to yellow with this most current set of numbers. So again, I think that color scheme is going to be a very fluid thing, just depending on the number of cases. But at this point, the town is a yellow. We are getting some additional complaints, some of them more vague, some of them more specific about complaints, COVID complaints in town. So I will follow up on those. And I think that's
about
all
the mask wearing.
Yeah, mask wearing is the biggest part of it. So, and so I will check in on those. Again, generally speaking, when I have been into facilities in town, even when I'm checking up on mask complaints. Generally, the compliance is pretty high. So I will check on these 2 complaints that we received recently, and talk to the appropriate stores, so, and the managers.
Great, thank you.
And that's it.
Great.
All right, let's try this. Can you see my screen? Yes? Okay.
Yep.
I'm not sure. I can't, for some reason, it won't let me show the whole thing without, I'll see if I can do this without my notes. We'll see how we do. So Jim beat me to the punch, which is great. Not Jim. Yeah, Jim Graffy, we've had 9 cases over the last 14 days for our rate is now 6.6 per 100,000. And that brings us back down from the yellow. So that's a good sign. So we do recognize that Littleton's population is only 10,000 people and will tend to bounce around a lot. With 1 or 2 cases can make a big difference here, as we could see from last week. So to that effect, a month and a half ago, when we were working with the school committee, we were looking at aggregate rates for some of the communities that are around us. So that's the border communities, the contiguous communities. So it's the border, slightly bigger, 495 belt, county, and the state. So that's just a reminder of the state of the town groupings, and this is how you calculate the rates, which I will leave in your packet, but we don't need to go over them again since we did them last week. So you can see the map that results from these rates that the DPH presents is quite red and yellow. It's a big change from it was 2 weeks ago when there was a lot of yellow and green. So we are, as a state, trending higher just overall. And in our area, we're also, it's hard to tell because we have some green communities, some gray communities that have less than 5 cases. Those are actually green. And then some red communities at higher risk. So when you do the rates, we have 6.6 for 100,000 people. The border communities, so that's Acton, Westford, Groton, Air, Harvard, Boxborough, that aggregates to 4.3, so it's lower. And the contiguous communities, which are just one circle around that, is 5.6. So our rate probably is going to lie between all of these week to week. So you can see it stabilizes a little bit, but we're still yellow all across our surrounding communities. I think it's safe to say that we are trending, we're also trending upwards for all of these communities. And then 495 belt, Middlesex County, and state are all in the red and also trending higher for the rates. So we graphed it since we started tracking it in early August, and as you can see, it's trending higher. Littleton bounces a little bit more than most other towns, but that's because of our denominator. But these 2 right here are the border and the surrounding communities from that. And everything else is, so we're falling back in line with those, which is what you would expect or hope for, I should say. And then everything else is trending into the red. So then the other metric the state presents is the total test positivity. So that's the number of tests that are positive over the total number of tests conducted that week. And the Harvard Global Health Institute suggests a less than 3% positive test for suppression of rates and 1% for maintenance. What is not clear is whether that should be individuals tested or total tests. So I need to do some more digging into this. And the daily report, the state presents it both ways, but we only have total test positivity at our disposal in that weekly report. So, and another thing is the total number of tests that that are done week to week is incredibly stable. There's no like big jump in the number of tests. This has been pretty much the same throughout the whole time period we've been tracking. So the number of tests aren't changing, but the test positivity is trending higher in our surrounding area. So despite us having here in Littleton 2 less cases this week, we actually had a higher test positivity. And the same for our surrounding and border communities. So we are trending higher for testing. It's stable for Route 495 in Middlesex County. I don't understand why that stabilized, but hopefully that's a good sign. And then the state actually had a large jump this week. An increase of over 1%. And if you compare that to last week, it's actually a doubling. So you can see that in the graph that the state doubled its test positivity since last week. hope that's just some sort of anomaly. We'll see where that goes the next couple of weeks, but everything's kind of slowly trending higher, even for test positivity.
And excuse me, Katrina, that means that the tests are positive.
Yeah, so the total, there's more total positive tests than there over week that are increasing the over time. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. So the average daily case rates for our area are ranging from 4.3 to 6.6, with Littleton being the 6.6. We had 9 cases over the last 14 days. And our test positivity is trending higher in town as it is for the border and surrounding communities. So our area is yellow, very much in the yellow. So the 495 belt, Middlesex County, and Mass are all red. The rates are, and test positivity, the rates are trending higher for all of those areas, and only test positivity for the state is trending higher. But again, the signs are pointing to things are moving in an upward direction, unfortunately. So the other thing the state reports on the weekly report is the rates per 100,000 for age groups. And this is helpful just because you can get an idea of if there's one age group more than another who's having exposures and testing positive and becoming cases. So again, the trends haven't really changed much since last week, but they've all trended higher, except for the 20 to 29s have kind of leveled off. Let's hope that stays true, but I'm wondering if that's an artifact of who's getting tested now, if there's been a change in testing at colleges. That could impact this case identification for that age group. So that's something that hopefully the state will tell us more about. But in general, there's no one age group who's impacted more than another. I think it's hard to target an intervention when everyone's trending in the same direction. So I just wanted to end the metric thing with this Swiss cheese graphic that I shared last week, with the idea being that each layer of protection we can put in place adds another layer to improve our success. So, and what I think, and maybe Jim Gareffi can speak to this a little bit, is what I'm hearing from the state level is that it's still unmasked social gatherings and household asymptomatic, pre-symptomatic spread that's really driving the change in rates. So if we can take precautions even when we're home, that would be really helpful to protect our entire community. So wearing a mask when you're friends and family, then try to meet people outside, avoiding large groups or really long duration events. And if this one's, I know there's a gap in the state policy, and I'm going to keep saying it in hopes that some people can do this, but if you're able to quarantine, if you discover you have a known exposure, or if you're waiting for testing, that really helps prevent some asymptomatic or pre-symptomatic spread. So hopefully these kind of things can help us keep our rates pretty good here in Littleton. That's all I have.
Oh, boy.
Was there anything else that any of the COVID advisory team wanted to share? And anybody, Janet?
I had sent over some information about a relationship with Quest Diagnostics that
Oh, that's right.
John had brought up, and sent over a slide deck regarding the recommendation on testing. I don't know if you guys had a chance to look at it because it was only a few hours ago.
Excuse me, Kevin. Could I just make a comment about the metrics?
Sure.
There is a recently published study of spread and prevalence in the underlying causes, and there are no surprises in this massive study. It's basically indoors or not, families and people traveling, moving around in and out of such familial housing settings. That's the main cause of spread. So there are no surprises here. That report, I think, is in a recent issue of Science. I think I've sent it on to Katrina. And however the rest of you want it, I'll pump it out to you, because it covers many countries, many different settings, and it comes back pretty consistent. So we know for the next couple of months, at least, regardless of what happens to the curves, our targets are people living in houses and moving in and around. So it's
that shared
right
air where you're not masked around them. So our families are big risk factors. Of
yes, the family is, and people from the outside coming. I mean, we have to belabor the point. I think everyone here understands that. We just got to get the word out that the virus has you beat this time of year, which is going to appear in my newsletter, because people don't realize we're changing from the Hallison days of low numbers. We're changing our behaviors, but the virus remains just as infectious, just as contagious as it always been. And this is this is perfect for them.
For it, yeah. I guess I had a couple of questions. Is there any way that we can use that Swiss cheese graphic for LCTV minus the vaccine and the last two slices that I think you added this week?
Yeah, so that was actually added by epidemiologists, and I think so I included this version just because I do think it's important for something like a Board of Health who has decision-making capabilities in those areas to remember. But yes, we can definitely use the prior version for LCTV.
Right, I don't want to throw vaccines into the mix with people thinking, oh, there's a vaccine, let's do that.
Yeah, I can send you I can make a slide for you. Yeah.
All right. And Jim, how do the numbers compare to that formula that you and I talked about yesterday? I think it's pretty amazing that we go from 10 to 11 cases and it's red, and 9 cases and we've changed color, so it's pretty dramatic, I know, given our population. But we talked about that formula that you were using yesterday. Did it come out to, I know you said you thought we were going back to yellow. Did it work out the way you thought it was gonna? Jim Gareffi?
Yep. So Katrina, what Lisa's talking about, Dr. Herman from Brockton actually did a little webinar on Maven, kind of for boards of health to be able to figure out their community color before Wednesday, now Thursday. And so I ran the numbers for Littleton and I got 6.6. So I did it right, I think. Hopefully that's a reasonable way of kind of getting a sense of that going forward. So
yeah, that'd be great if we could get a snapshot like off week in,
Yeah. Well, it's, again, part of the problem I was having is I didn't know what population numbers they were using. And it wasn't something I would have even guessed. I figured it was either going to be 2010 census or maybe the town's most recent census, but it was something quite different. So having that bottom number was important. So, and to your point about the things we're seeing from contact tracing, unfortunately, I just saw a recent CDC flyer on it now, carpooling, particularly to school and sport activities, sleepovers. Who would have thought that parents are still letting kids do sleepovers? But that seems to pop up more than we like in our contact tracing. People still going to work sick. Oh, I didn't feel good, but I still went in. It's like, really, what part of this don't you get? And then college students coming home, we don't always get word that they've come home. And we've had at least one case where we found out because somebody called us and said they'd been home, and they'd been home before we knew they were positive, and they'd been out and about visiting friends. And so that one affected it, but not in Littleton, but that one in another town. So those are the things we're seeing. So what I tell everybody that will listen is that you have no idea who the person you're coming into contact, who they came into contact with. And so the only way you can truly protect yourself is to take those public health protections. And again, for businesses, same thing. You don't know what people do when they leave your building, whether it's school or your business or whatever. So make sure you're following those protocols in-house to the fullest extent possible.
Jim, that information about where you are hearing or seeing cases is really helpful, actually, or what you're learning from your contact tracing. That's like really great places for us to put energy into education.
Okay.
So thank you.
Yep. No, like I say, in talking with our public health nurses, this is the stuff that they're dealing with. So I'm trying to pick up enough stuff so I can try to get it out to people.
Okay. And so, Kevin, you had some information about testing. Any more questions for Jim or Katrina about the metrics and the numbers for this week?
Hey,
Just one, Katrina, obviously these metrics don't take into account the 2 new cases we just learned about today from middle school in the Russell Street.
Yeah, so the period that this captures is 2 weeks ago, but it ends on anyone who tested as of Saturday. So we are, was it Saturday or Sunday?
It's a Saturday.
Saturday. Yeah,
goes
so it
Sunday to
starts
Saturday.
Sunday to Saturday for a 2-week period, Sunday to Saturday. So yes, anyone we've learned about since Sunday or earlier this week does not captured in this snapshot. And I know I have personally heard of 3 cases this week. So I anticipate that that our rates are going to be very different next week.
So next week's numbers will be based on from the 11th through the 30. Let's see, am I doing this right? The 11th to the 24th, I think.
I think you're right.
Yeah. So
Are any of these new, so-called new or unyet calibrated cases, are they from the schools or just another sort of random walk through socialization?
without giving out too much information, everybody who needs to know on those things, Mike has been informed on that.
Well, we just got the letters from is it the middle school, one from Russell Street, and then
So the school nurses have been notified, the nurses here have been notified, so.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
so Jim, this is Kevin Davis. I know Katrina and I have been struggling with the population numbers a little bit because sometimes the state uses slightly different ones. If you have some information and care to share electronically in an email to us, that'd be really good because we're trying to pull that down and get it so that our calculations are the same as the state. So that would be really helpful.
Sure. So what I did was in that webinar from Maven, they actually gave the chart of the kind of a cheat sheet for all communities. So I took all the ones that I'm concerned with and made one chart. I think I have saved it. So I can just send it to you, Katrina, and whoever. And what it does is it gives you the towns, it gives you the population estimates that they use. And then it gives you what numbers you should expect for gray, green, yellow, or red zone.
Yeah, that's
Fair enough.
helpful.
We were just looking for the population. So if you have the source of where the state's getting that data from, that'd be lovely.
Yeah, it's a McCormick estimate or something like that. I'll send you the link, Katrina.
It'll be interesting to see if that's the same what the DPH published on their weekly report, because the numbers I get from the state estimates that I thought they were using are pretty close for most towns and not great for certain towns. So we're trying to figure out what are the right ones.
So they have Littleton at 9718.
Okay, so this one has 10,227.
Okay.
So interesting, and I know the state's using something out of UMass. So
Yeah, I think it's a McCormick Institute estimate from 2018.
Oh, 2018.
Yeah.
It's the Donahue.
Kevin, I think we have the 2019.
That's what we have. We have the 2019.
So that would be explaining why some of these are off. So that would be, let's see if we can get that data so that this can get closer.
Yeah, let me get that for you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Nope, all set. I'll have it.
if we had the time, I can send the slide deck over to LCTV via email right now, and we can just run through the testing information that we came up with. But is it?
Are you sending to LCTV?
Just that PDF slide deck with the recommendation on the testing.
I wouldn't send that just yet. Not for LCTV to publish or anything like that.
Just to
Let's
put it
go.
on the screen so we could see it
Oh, okay. So we can look at it tonight.
if you'd like.
Yeah. No, I thought you were going to put it on LCTV as a PSA.
Kevin,
Not
can
yet.
you share your screen? Kevin, can you share it on your screen?
Could I email it to you actually
Um,
to share?
you can. Hold on.
Just hold on a second. If you just email it to lctv@littletonma.org, that'd be terrific. Are you able to hear me?
Is this all this just to share a screen?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I apologize. I thought you were talking about.
No, they don't want to post it on LCTV. It's just to share the screen for tonight.
Just to share the screen right now? Oh, okay.
You should have it.
think, don't we all have it?
Yeah, we have it.
All
Yeah,
right, well, why don't we just look at it rather than have it on LCTV? Is this Jonathan, is this your information?
Which one did you share, Kevin?
Just the latest slide deck. I can bring it up. It's fine.
Okay. So the slide deck was put together by the team where we, in essence, trying to provide the rationale for the testing and sort of a possible approach. So next slide, Kevin, please. So again, the main concerns with trying to implement a testing strategy as soon as possible is due to the fact that we're quickly approaching holiday season with Thanksgiving and followed by Christmas, the Christmas, Hanukkah seasons. And there's been increases in transmission that's been observed following large state holidays. So, and the fact that college students would also be coming home, during the breaks is also a reason of concern to implement some sort of testing strategy. And so, and also, as Katrina had mentioned before, the increase in household transmission is one of the main drivers that we're seeing now. So again, these are reasons why we should consider having some sort of testing plan implemented, at least within the schools. Next slide, Kevin, please. So this is going back to Katrina's the Swiss cheese model that you showed me before, and the point to emphasize here is the fact that testing is just a piece of the puzzle. It's not a solution for everything. It's just something that will be an added, will help in controlling any sort of outbreak that may occur within town. So it's just a piece. It's not a solve by any means. Next slide, please, Kevin. And then something that one of the things, and so this is more or less to address a point that Mike Fontanella had brought up before, that there's really no guidance as to how testing should be done, but the CDC is I guess they're suggesting that when individuals start to show signs or symptoms of COVID-19, that testing should be implemented, and that's sort of a reactionary approach as opposed to what we're trying to push, which is sort of a proactive approach of trying to potentially identify individuals and potentially keeping them out of the schools, so prevent any sort of spread. And again, this is something where CDC recommends doing this where there's areas of high community transmission. So we're not at that stage yet, but if trends continue within Massachusetts, that our surrounding areas may get into that stage. So again, it's another reason why this should be considered. Next slide, please, Kevin. So, I guess in terms of thinking of the strategies for putting this in place, there's a couple of things that need to be considered. Whether, I guess with the individuals that are being tested, we should sort of try and decide what groups we want to try and look at. So, repeat testing for some of these individuals may not be ideal. And one of the things that has been suggested is that there should be a prioritization of who gets tested. So in this case, we're suggesting that the first line of testing would be the teachers and staff within the schools. And then we could slowly potentially expand that out to the students that are attending the in-hybrid learning program. And then next slide, please, Kevin. And so ideally what we would propose is that, at least with the proposal that was provided to us by Quest, that if the teachers were to get tested, as an example, sampling would be performed at the school under the guidance, under the supervision of the nurses. So in this case, it's the self-swabbing by the teachers and staff, and the samples would then be picked up at each of the different schools and then delivered to the CLIA certified lab for screening. And then within 24 to 48 hours, test results would be released to both the individuals as well as to the Board of Health and school and the schools. So the hypothetical scenario that they proposed that proposed going forward with is to screen the teachers and staff towards the middle of the week. So this way they can, if there is a positive individual that's identified, contact tracing can begin. And also you can have the identification of a substitute teacher for that individual, as well as the individual can get retested, hopefully within that Thursday or Friday to confirm any sort of result. So for the Quest Diagnostics proposal, it was based on a molecular screening. So they have a qPCR-based screen that they would use for detection of active infection. And one of the things that we proposed is that this program we would try to get this, that the program should initiate at the end of the first holiday break. So in this case, ideally this would be after the teachers and students return from Thanksgiving holiday, and you would have the first sets of screening performed beginning in December, and then from there it can be decided on how frequent retesting will be, for this population. Next slide, Kevin. So for this approach, the team has three scenarios that we'd like to put forward. The best case scenario, of course, would be if you have, if it's possible to screen all the teachers and students that are attending in-person learning, as initially after the holiday. So this way you can establish some sort of baseline, and then afterwards you would have weekly testing for the teachers and staff, and then if it's feasible, also perform weekly testing of the students again attending in person. If that's not feasible, then you would sort of dial it back and again still screen the teachers and staff on a weekly basis, since they're there for the majority of the time for both cohorts. So it's there. If there's something that's going on, you're likely to catch it within that group. But then instead of testing all the students each week, you would do expanded testing to a small portion of that student population. So it would be randomized testing of various groups. And in this case, one way that you can look at this is if you do sort of the molecular screening for the teachers, and then do some sort of pool testing for the students, that randomized student populations. And then the other scenario would be where we just screen the teachers upon return from holiday, and then perform weekly testing of randomized pools of the teachers and staff. So those are three scenarios that that I think the board and school committee should consider, or that we feel that they should consider going forward. And we realize that budgetary limitations may apply here, but in thinking of how the approach and what the both committees would like to get out of this, I think the scenario on the right would probably be the best one going forward. Next slide, Kevin, please.
So, I actually didn't include on that. I thought those were just notes that you had put together on that for the notes on it, but I can dig it up and share it if you'd like me to.
All right. I believe that. I think that's it.
So that would be the next slide, John.
So when we're thinking of this, this as going back to what Katrina's Swiss cheese, the figure that she's shown before, this process would not replace any of the steps, the mediation steps that are currently in place. It would just help the Board of Health and school committee understand get a better sense of surveillance within the schools, and just be able to use this as a proactive approach to identify potentially infected individuals. This is not going to replace what's currently recommended for the 2-week quarantine for travel outside of state, and then this approach, because it's Quest Diagnostics has the full logistics of being able to set up the screening and the database maintenance, that they would be able to work with both the Board of Health and school committee in being able to track the testing and see how things are. So they have an infrastructure in place that will help both boards or both committees in tracking all this data, and this data does again belong to the Board of Health or whoever's paying for all the screening. I think that's it. Oh, one other item. Sorry, I just remembered this now. So as I mentioned before, the initial quote that we received from Quest Diagnostics was based on molecular screening. They are anticipating having a rapid antigen test going online sometime in November. So that's something else to consider in the whole screening process. So for now, it would be just for molecular based, but then if the decision was made to possibly expand this to the larger student population, then the rapid antigen screen may be something else to consider as well.
Okay. I guess I have a couple of questions. You said how and who will be paying for all of this? I don't think we have a budget for this. I don't think the town does. Are there grants or anything in the CARES Act? I think we only have the CARES Act until December. And how many towns are actually doing this weekly testing? Any idea?
I don't have the numbers offhand, and Quest had said they had other towns inquire about this. So I know we're not the only ones considering it, but I don't have the actual numbers of towns that are implementing this.
Mm-hmm.
I did try to look into Watertown as to what sort of program they have there, and I haven't been able to dig up anything in specifics in regards to that.
Okay. Mike, any questions? Mike Zeldin?
Not so much questions. I really appreciate all the work that's been done.
I know, yeah, it's definitely a lot of work. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, it's not easy to do this. And the numbers you came up with, the cost of it, I think you have a quotation in one of the slides,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to round it up. When you include all the other stuff that goes with it, it would be about $100,000 per test. In other words, if you did a regime, you came in once, it would be $100,000. Is that a fair sort of underestimate of the total cost, would you say?
I guess it depends on the numbers again. It's identifying the population within the schools that you want to test. So again, we recommend the teachers and staff. So if you're looking at that, that's about 200 individuals based on numbers that I saw from the last week's school committee. So if you were to do that initial screening, I believe that comes up to around 16,000 on that initial screen, and then a decision can be made on how frequently you want to have that testing be done. If you were to expand it out to the students attending in-school learning, at say the elementary schools, that will of course raise the price up a little bit, but then you have a better idea of what's going on. Surveillance.
Sure. Yeah, it just so happens there's a recent piece that just came out where someone actually sat down and did an optimization, but basically figured out how to do pool testing to really be high yield for the suppression of spread. So it was if the purpose, I'm trying to get focused on what the purpose of the testing would be. Okay, I mean, it's very nice. I mean, everyone would like to know, identify the people who were inadvertently or asymptomatic or symptomatic as early as possible, get them out of the system, get them into quarantine and protect as many as we can. And so it's basically to prevent spread or to suppress spread, which is hard to do and also can be very expensive. So there is an approach to do pool testing where you have low prevalence. And I would say for Littleton, and even if you combine this with another 3 or 4 towns, compared to other cities, we're peanuts. And I mean, it sounds terrible, but we don't have that many cases in a volume sense. So we're really low prevalence. So if we started testing, we would be in very good shape. I know it sounds odd, but if we started early, as you suggested, start early to do pool testing, we would basically get a head start on being able to very quickly, or more quickly than might be otherwise possible, that's the thesis I'm advancing, to basically prevent other people from getting more people sick.
Correct.
By identifying quickly. What I'm not sure of is the school population the only place we should be doing this? Should we open it up to more? I mean, there's a bunch of technical questions here that maybe you can, or you could address.
So the question came up of who's going to pay for this. So if we open it up, then again, it's going to increase everything. So again, if we go back to where we feel that the school is a good representative of the community, if you're sampling within the schools and you see that there's a trend going up, then that tells you something. That'll tell you a little bit more of the bigger picture within the town. So that will help in understanding that. And also to the point that you're saying before, that till now we haven't really seen anything, but we are coming into we are in the start of the flu season. So we unfortunately will probably see an uptick in these incidences, as well as knowing that we're entering into holiday season where people are going to be traveling. We can't control that, and people are going to be gathering. We can't control that. What we can control is being able to monitor what happens upon their return, assuming that the schools are still doing in-person learning. So this way, if you have some sort of means to track what's going on upon that return, I think it'll help the town. And Katrina had mentioned before that we're based on the numbers that we're getting, there's a lag. There's a 1 to 2 week lag in being able to track this. Whereas if we have some sort of screening approach in place, we're ahead of that curve. We're able to see things not at real time, but much sooner than this 2 week, the 2 week reports that come out.
Okay.
So using the recent incidents that happened, I guess this week at both the middle school and Russell Street, there's a chance that we would know that information by the end of this week or beginning of next week, as opposed to having it come out in the subsequent, in next week's report or whatnot, or the following week.
Okay.
So,
So the net result, if what I'm hearing you saying is that you feel a case could be made to the Board of Selectmen and everybody else involved in watching every dollar spent, that if we did testing, let's just assume it's pool testing had this cost associated with it, that you could justify it on the basis that it would definitely allow us to suppress spread.
So I think
That's why I'm after the purpose of the test. Okay. If it's a calendar event, I don't know how persuasive that would be. And what I'm really getting at here, the town just borrowed several $1 million to make the water safer from a bunch of fluorocarbon compounds, PFASs, right? And compared to PFAS, all I can tell you, this virus beats it by several thousand-fold in terms of being dangerous. So if we have let's put it this way, this is a worthwhile project if we can convince ourselves that the objective to it is going to be measurable and detectable benefit the town, keep people out of the hospital, make sure older people aren't suffering from this disease, because for them it's terminal very often, and keep the schools open as long as possible and get people.
So in terms of our demographics of our town and where people gather, the schools are the big gathering spot in our town. That's where most people are present in groups that we purposefully put there for many hours in a day. And those people go home and spread it and bring it to their households if they're exposed.
Okay.
So, and then keeping schools open is really important for businesses staying open and people being able to work and things like that. So that is just one small part of like targeting the schools and testing to get a quicker reaction time. So there's not as many cases spreading before we know that there is.
So that's really
one point.
Yeah. So that's really my side on this too, is that as Katrina and John have both said, is that what you're doing is you're decreasing the amount of time that the response is happening in the schools. Yes, you are. It's a periodic test that is happening, but what you're doing is decreasing that from when someone says, oh, I don't feel so well. Okay, let me go call a doctor and go figure this out. What you're doing is getting that front line, or not front line, but you're getting that defensive line set up, a part of that Swiss cheese that you're actually starting to implement that piece so that you can start to have more of a more of something like, a canary in a coal mine. You're looking at that population where you're looking at putting a whole bunch of individuals together in an enclosed space for a long period of time. The other population, and I know the committee talked about, or the team talked about this a little bit, was also looking at where else do people spend a lot of time in town. And the only other place that we kind of came up with besides our fire and police were also when you go to the grocery store. So that was, how do you look at Donnellan's? How do you look at Market Basket? How do you look at Shaw's? Wherever people shop, those types of things is is there something that the town can work with those businesses to try to figure out, or are those businesses giving their frontline workers a test? And is there some way that that Jim can plug into some of those results to try to help, coordinate this better with the town? And so that's the kind of holistic stuff that we talked about. But the biggest impact that we thought as a team was looking at it from the school perspective, because of all of those things that we're seeing coming out in studies about multi-generational families, about the kids bringing it home to the house, about how do we make sure that when we come back from Thanksgiving or, after the Christmas break, whatever the school committee decides to do, we get that baseline test. We look at doing a new baseline after every vacation. Like, you come back from Thanksgiving, you get a baseline. You come back from the New Year's, Christmas, Hanukkah break, you get a baseline. You come back from February break, you get a baseline. You come back from April break, you get a baseline. So all these things talk about, it's not just a one-time effect. It's putting a policy or procedures, whatever word you want to use, in place to get that and to continue that going forward.
Yeah, I'm not being clear. Even the frequency that you mentioned, I don't think is frequent enough. I think you're being very optimistic. You're underestimating what this virus can do, given the fact of it's 2 to 1. You get 2 victims for every infection. So that is very impressive.
The R naught of 2.6 or whatever it is that's been published is quite incredible.
Yeah. So that's why I mentioned pooled, mainly because we're always going to be compared to other places, quote, low prevalence, just because of our population. And there may be a way to do that. So what I'm trying to do is put together a case for the town to seriously consider spending the bucks. And I'm sorry that I brought up the PFAS thing, because obviously the town's ready to spend money on that. This is a present danger. Let's put it that way. So it should be interesting to see what the reaction and what story we can put together as quickly as possible. The pitch we need to put together as soon as possible, as long as we're very clear on what we expect to get from the effort and how big an effort should we have in order for it to have that effect.
I will say that I think we'll benefit from maybe like one more week of digging into all of this stuff, and that in addition to what was presented, there are avenues like pooled testing or antigen testing that we simply just don't have answers back for yet. So I'll just put that out there.
Are you thinking of orthogonal? In other words, were you trying to guard against false positives and negatives by doing the PCR and followed by antigen to double check?
Actually, I think a preferred if we were to be able to launch today with something, my preference would just be antigen across the board, just because it's you're going to get false positives and negatives, but it's it's a really good test for population screening. It's really inexpensive. It's like $5 a test. It's just we just don't know that it's available just quite yet in our area. And John mentioned that Quest is developing one that might be available in November. And so, I think we need to dig into that. And I think pooled testing, I think we've looked into pooled testing too. The paper that you're referencing in Nature that looks at the hypercube slicing of low prevalence samples is intriguing, but it's also still preliminary. It's like the protocol that will enable better testing. It's just not implemented yet. And so we're just not quite there yet. And so I think we just probably need to wait just like couple, maybe like one more week, hopefully, and we'll get some better answers on the antigen and pooled sampling as well. And then we can have a more complete story.
Okay. In the meantime, this is trivia, but it caught me, and I thought it was sort of amusing. In the proposal, or the printed proposal, I'm going to try to find it again. If you go to propose back to school solution for Littleton Public Schools, I think it's on the second page. It says this is a polymerase chain reaction test for COVID-19 DNA.
Yeah, that's what it's they take the RNA and they make DNA.
I know what they do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions or comments about testing? Post testing? Okay. Great. Well, thank you guys for all your work. A lot of information, and I guess we're going to have to go to town to do this. Mike, you're going to help us with this, right?
What?
Yeah.
No, you have all these professionals here who, I mean, I'm if we could get, very frankly, if we can start working on what we're trying to do and what kind of result we're after and the impact it will have on the town, then I think that it's worth the fight starting as early as possible, because I'm concerned not just about the holidays. I'm also concerned about while we're waiting, I use that word advisedly, for the vaccines. That's, in other words, I'm looking at late spring or early summer before it becomes a general distribution issue.
Yeah. Okay. Or is this Thursday's the better time to meet? Katrina, do you guys still come to our Wednesday meetings, or are Thursdays better to meet?
It comes down to that. I don't know what, if you want metrics, we're still tough on Thursdays because
you have to be, yeah. Okay.
They say they'll post them by 4, but the last few weeks they've been rolling later and later. So I'm not actually sure when the best meeting time is for you guys in terms of, unless Jim Gareffi can do a quick and dirty for you from earlier in the week. And then we can follow up on Thursday with more specific.
Okay.
Jim never does anything quick and dirty.
Does his Maven search there, that is his magical Maven database. But in terms of like me putting together these slides and metrics, it relies on the state publishing, and they've moved that to Thursday at, they say by 4. It's going to keep being pushed later because that's what happens. So we'll see.
All right. So I guess if you can keep working on that, that more testing information, see what you can bring back to us, and we'll talk to the town, I guess, see if this is something that they can possibly afford and do. So, all right. Thank you. And Scott, did you have anything that you wanted to add? I know you've been here. Are we talking holiday festivities with you. We can't hear you. Dave, can you unmute Scott?
He is unmuted.
All right, Scott.
Turn up your mic.
Scott, you all set? Anybody? Dave or Judy? Any help with Scott?
He's not muted on the system.
Oh, does he have a microphone plugged in, Scott? Or just talk louder?
Oh boy.
No, looks like it needs a, you need to plug something in.
Scott, if you can hear this, if you go to the little caret next to the audio mute button, you can pull up your audio settings, and there's a slider there for volume, input volume.
He's actually off right now.
Oh, is he off?
Oh, he's back.
Not muted.
We can see you.
Can you write it? Can you write down what you want to say and then hold it up like this? Only if it's good news, Scott. Only if it's good news.
Hi, Scott. Your voice is not, you can't hear you. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I don't think there's the audio there.
I wasn't the only one getting problem.
Scott, do you want to email us what you want to talk about, or?
Lisa, he's texting me. He's going to try and call in.
Okay, perfect.
Go ahead while I help him with that, okay? Move on to something else.
Go ahead.
Very
I guess
nice.
the next thing we have to talk about is Halloween, guys.
Stay home.
I have to say that I'm changing my mind a little bit after listening to, I guess the whole that we've gone from red to yellow, but that's old cases, in 2 weeks, next week we'll get this week's, and we know it's going up. So I have to say that I'm leaning a little bit more towards, because of the trend all around us.
Yeah.
Even though we went to yellow this time, leaning towards canceling it. So what does everybody else think?
I believe the chief of police had a press release in which he basically duplicated pretty much on what is on your newsletter.
But the CDC guidelines and.
Yeah, he just repeated everything.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So the question is, you're suggesting it may be a good idea to basically call off Halloween. Is that what you basically recommend or mandate?
Trick or treating, not Halloween.
I'm talking about the street activity. No street activity.
And then to also go back to another subject, is Park and Rec having a trunk or treat? Because that was specifically something that was recommended against by the governor.
Lisa, they are not. They when Oktoberfest was canceled, they dropped their idea of trunk or treat.
Okay, awesome. I don't know. What does everybody else say? think about the trick or
I've been
treating?
going back and forth, and I don't know. It's probably the responsible thing to do is to cancel, but I don't know. What do you guys say?
I think it should be canceled.
Okay, I think it should be canceled mainly because if we want to keep the schools open as long as possible for in-house learning, and we want to keep those who earn a living and can't afford to have their kids at home all the time, that's reason enough to reduce the risk of having someone get sick and have to quarantine.
Yeah.
The question is, what can we, what is it we can formulate that is understood and we get maximum compliance without jamming stuff down people's throat? Because as I said, the chief of police has already released his version, which is the CDC, what do you call recommendations, which are now sort of, when it comes to proximity and how long you spend time in someone who may be infected, it's out of date. Number one.
But we did put the caveat in there that we would be revisiting it, and depending on how things were trending, that we reserve the right to change our mind. So
okay,
it's trending poorly in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you want to give it another week.
Well, maybe it would be useful to ask, are we thinking of, do we want to basically do a recommendation and say, we think it's a bad idea to have trick-or-treating? Or do we want to say, we are recommending not to use the public throughways, the streets, what the town controls for trick-or-treating? Not Halloween, of course, just trick-or-treating. I mean, there's a difference between a recommendation and saying you can't do that.
Right. All right, Scott. So let's table this, and Scott's back on with his. We can hear him now, I think.
How about now? Can you hear me now? I can hear you.
We already did that ad for that cell phone. We can hear you now.
Sounds good. So it's been an interesting week. We are dealing with some of the virus as well, and obviously as the numbers do creep up through town, we're also experiencing some challenges. We believe we have things contained within our facility. But obviously we've taken additional precautions, trying to, keep everybody healthy and keep our own folks separated the best we can. We do have a few members in quarantine. But we are moving forward, and, we've had all of our folks tested. Everybody is, have some results back, still waiting on others. But we're, dealing with this new wave, as we're starting to see, additional things come across town. It's, as we come into Halloween and trick-or-treating, obviously a lot of the stuff is a concern. We've, seen, I think Groton and Air have both canceled theirs, just in the last week as well. But just some food for thought. Sorry. I mean, that's kind of it for now. If anybody has any questions.
So you'd be okay if we basically said no trick-or-treating?
Obviously, that's up to you guys.
No, I know that. I'm talking about from the point of view of your workload and the staff.
Honestly, I don't think, I don't think Halloween really affects our workload. Over the last few years, it really, it's not what it used to be. It just, as long as folks take the proper precautions, you can't urge that enough. Take the proper precautions, and everything should be okay. It's the ones that don't, but that's out of all of our control.
Go ahead, Mike.
I was, I was more leaning to emergency calls of people getting sick down the road and making sure his staff is protected. Excuse me. So I'll put something up in front of us, and that's a motion that the Board of Health recommends that the Select Board and the Board of Health join in canceling trick-or-treating activities associated with Halloween on public throughways and property, which would include all streets. So you can take pot shots at this motion. So
Why do you specify public roadways?
I am not, what I'm trying to find out from other people in the group here is whether or not we can reach also into private property. Because what we're basically saying is that once the person gets off the street and moves onto someone's steps or even sidewalk or porch, they're no longer in town property. They're on private property.
So
I don't really-
you're
I
suggesting
would
a
have to,
curfew type of thing, Mike? Or-
I offered up the motion to get the discussion focused. We can add, subtract.
I wouldn't think that we would have to get that specific, and I think we would just say to cancel it.
Okay.
Or do you guys want to wait to make this motion and make a decision next week after we talk about more metrics? It might just be simply obvious next week, if we're back in the red, you know, we gotta cancel it.
So Lisa, this is Kevin Davis. If you want to hear about some metrics, Groton and Air, who both canceled, Groton is green at 3.3, so they're barely holding on, and Air is at 4.4 in yellow. So those are just their data points, if that helps you start to make some of your decisions.
And they're all going to come to Littleton.
No, because we give out raisins and apples, Kevin, or rocks. Got a rock.
Do you want me to amend the motion so you can attack it with more vigor?
Can I just ask, is Scott still on?
He is.
He is. Scott, how are your people? Are they okay? I mean, you said they're having testing, but symptomatically, are they doing all right? You're not here?
Scott, you may need to hit *9.
God, can you hit *9 on your phone?
Do you want to just, I'm just concerned about your people. So if you want to email us or text us. Sorry, I changed the subject, so.
Lisa, did you have a motion?
Mike had a motion. Yeah. Does anybody want to add to it?
Could you repeat it, Mike? I'm sorry.
Sure. I'm going to modify it somewhat too. Make a motion that the Board of Health cancel trick and treating in relation to Halloween, effective immediately.
Second.
Okay, so let's do a roll call. Kevin Baker,
Kevin Baker, yes.
Gino,
Yes, Gino, yes.
Louise Nichols,
Louise Nichols, yes.
Mike Zeldin,
Mike Zeldin, yes.
and Lisa Flanagan, yes. So I guess all that stuff that we sent out might be a little bit, might need to be corrected, Janet.
Retracted, yes.
Retracted, corrected, yeah. So I think I think the way things are trending, I think with the concern that we've had a couple of letters from people, the other towns, like Kevin has said, the other people that might come to our community because their communities aren't considered safe, they would come to our community because they're considered safe and might increase our spread and our positive tests. So
That is true.
yeah. All right. So I guess that's unanimous. Sorry, kids.
Next year will be a better year.
Hopefully, yeah.
Make sure you know the chief. Make sure the chief of police knows.
Looks like Scott's back, Lisa.
Okay.
So two things. Scott said his people are doing fine symptom-wise, but I believe that this is a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen, correct? It's actually up to them to determine whether.
Right.
I'm just understanding.
Yeah.
Clarifying.
Yeah.
So the Board of Health was going to cancel it.
I'm not so sure, but it's whatever gets it done. I don't care.
Jim, did you have any comments about this? Should have probably asked you before we voted.
I'm not sure where the legal authority lies, but in most communities, it's the chief body, like the selectmen or whatnot, that actually cancels. So whether the motion would be to recommend selectmen cancel.
Right.
Do we need to take another vote and another motion, Janet?
If you want to just,
I'll be happy to.
don't know how it was phrased the last time.
Yeah. I'll be happy just to repeat it with the insert that the Board of Health strongly recommends and requests that the select board cancel trick and treating and related Halloween activities on Halloween Day.
For this year.
Halloween night.
Do we need to have a second and do roll call with the new motion, Janet?
I'll second again.
Okay. So go by roll call just to make it sure. Kevin? You're on mute.
Baker, yes. Sorry.
That's right. Gino?
Yeah. Gino, yes.
Louise?
Louise Nichols, yes.
Mike Zeldin?
Mike Zeldin, yes.
And Lisa Flanagan, yes. So does somebody have to talk to select board or do you just?
I'll talk to Joe in the morning.
Okay. All right. So is this
What
it?
is our next meeting? Is it next Thursday or Wednesday?
Wednesday, we have a regular meeting. I think we already got the, Janet already sent us the,
I didn't, just because I didn't want to confuse people.
oh, okay. Oh, I saw the draft. So.
Right. It'll go out in the morning.
Yep. So our next meeting will be Wednesday, October 28th at 7:00. And you guys will be getting the agenda soon.
Cool. Thanks.
What are we going to do with all the extra candy?
You put them away.
Give it to Gina.
All right. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
A second?
I'll second.
Okay. Roll call, Kevin Baker.
Baker, yes.
Gino?
Gino, yes.
Louise?
Louise Nichols, yes.
Mike?
Mike Zeldin, yes.
Yes. All right. Thank you, Jim, for being here tonight.
Yep.
And
I'll see you
Dave,
next Wednesday.
sorry,
I'll see you next Wednesday.
that'd be great.
The 28th.
28th at 7, Gino, on Zoom.
Yes.